He never got over his wife's disappearance. Years passed, but the pain never left. He kept her photo close, where she wore a unique pendant symbolizing the love they shared. But in an elegant restaurant, his son tugged at his shirt and pointed at the waitress. "Daddy, the waitress's pendant is just like the one in Mom's photo." The millionaire slowly turned around, and when he saw what she was wearing around her neck, he froze. It was the same pendant his missing wife used to wear. James Whitmore stood motionless at the edge of the small chapel's cemetery, his tall figure silhouetted against the Colorado mountains. The crisp autumn air carried whispers of approaching winter, but the chill in his bones had nothing to do with the weather. 12 years. 12 years since the mountain curve had taken Emily from him, and the pain remained as fresh as the day the police had called. "Dad," Ethan's voice pulled him back to the present. At 17, his son was no longer the traumatized 5-year-old who'd cry himself to sleep clutching his mother's photograph. He had Emily's observant eyes, the windows to a soul that noticed everything. "Sorry, lost in thought." James straightened his tie, a nervous habit he'd developed since taking over as CEO of Whitmore Properties. The company had tripled in value under his leadership, but he'd trade every penny to have his wife back. "You always say that here." Ethan knelt to place fresh lilies on the memorial stone. There was no body beneath it, just an empty vessel marking the absence of the woman who had been the heart of their family. "It's weird, isn't it, that they never found her?" James tensed. This was new. Ethan usually maintained respectful silence during their annual pilgrimage. The search was extensive. "Son, these mountains, they don't easily give up what they take." Ethan traced the inscription on the stone. "Emily Whitmore, beloved wife and mother." His fingers lingered on the date. "I've been reading about the accident reports." Ethan's voice was carefully neutral. "Some things don't add up." James's jaw tightened. "The investigation was thorough. Was it, Mom's car went over the edge, but they only found her purse, not her. The guardrail showed signs of another vehicle's impact, but that was dismissed as unrelated." Ethan looked up, a challenge in his eyes. "And her body was never recovered, despite the area being only moderately wooded. Doesn't that strike you as odd? These conspiracy theories won't bring her back, Ethan." James's voice was sharper than intended. "Let your mother rest." "Is she resting, though, without knowing what actually happened?" The silence between them stretched, heavy with unspoken questions. Una Taitarian, 500 miles away in Nashville, Tennessee. Hope jerked awake, her heart hammering against her ribs. The same dream. Falling, endless falling, and a child's voice screaming a name she couldn't quite grasp. She touched the crescent moon pendant at her throat, its small emerald catching the pre-dawn light filtering through thin curtains. "Mom, you okay?" Riley stood in the doorway of her small bedroom, mathematical equations printed on her pajamas. A birthday gift from Betty that perfectly captured the 11-year-old's obsession. Hope forced a smile. "Just a dream." "Sweetheart, what are you doing up so early?" "Couldn't sleep. I solved that equation my teacher said was for high schoolers." Riley's face lit up with the quiet pride she took in her extraordinary mathematical abilities. "Want to see?" Hope patted the bed beside her. Riley bounded over, notebook clutched to her chest. Where this talent came from, Hope couldn't explain. Certainly not from her. Waiting tables at Granny Betty's kitchen hardly required advanced calculus. "Show me your magic, Munchkin." As Riley excitedly explained variables and functions Hope barely comprehended, she felt the familiar ache, the emptiness where her past should be. 12 years since Betty had found her wandering alongside that road, bloodied and pregnant, with nothing but a pendant and fragmented nightmares. "You're doing that thing again," Riley observed, startlingly perceptive. "Where you look sad and touch your necklace." Hope dropped her hand, unaware she'd been fingering the pendant. "Just proud of my genius daughter. Now scoot. Early shift today." Riley gathered her notebook. "Betty made banana muffins last night. They're on the counter." After Riley left, Hope moved to the window, watching the sky lighten over Nashville's distant skyline. The doctors called it dissociative amnesia, a mind protecting itself from trauma. But what trauma had been so terrible that 12 years later, she still couldn't remember anything before waking up in that hospital? 30 minutes later, she entered the back door of Granny Betty's kitchen. The restaurant wouldn't open for another hour. But Betty was already there, rolling dough with gnarled hands that belied their strength. "Another nightmare?" Betty asked without looking up, her 70 years evident in the deep lines of her face, but not in her sharp eyes. "How'd you know?" "That pendant, you only fiddle with it after your dreams come visiting." Betty wiped flour from her hands and studied Hope with the intensity that always made Hope feel like the older woman was cataloging changes against some mental image. "Same one. Always the same falling, a child crying out, and then nothing." Hope tied her apron. "Betty, do you ever think it's weird that I've never remembered anything? Dr. Winters said most amnesia patients recover some memories eventually." Betty's hand stilled momentarily. "Some wounds are best left unprobed." "Girl, but what if someone's looking for me? What if I have family somewhere?" "You have family right here." Betty's voice was firm. "You have Riley. You have me." "I know, but nothing." Betty's tone softened. "What brought this on?" "More dreams." Hope hesitated. "Riley's school sent home registration forms for next year's advanced math program. They need family medical history. I couldn't fill it out. It just hit me how little I know about who I am, about who Riley is." Betty's eyes flickered with something Hope couldn't identify. Concern, perhaps, or guilt. "That child is who she is, because of how you raised her, not because of some DNA you can't remember. But her math abilities had to come from somewhere. Her father, maybe." Betty turned away abruptly. "We've got prep to finish before opening. Jennifer called in sick again, so you'll handle tables 1 through 10. Hope recognized the diversion, but let it drop. Betty had been her rock, giving her a job, a place to live, helping with Riley when she was born. If Betty thought some questions were better left unasked, maybe she was right. As Hope arranged silverware on tables, she couldn't shake the feeling that her nightmares were intensifying, becoming more frequent, almost as if something, or someone, was trying to break through the fog that separated Hope from whoever she had been before. Outside, Nashville was awakening to another day, people rushing to lives filled with memories and connections. Hope watched them through the window, wondering, not for the first time, if someone out there was watching the same sunrise and thinking of her. 3 acquisition offers on the table, and you're suggesting we pass on all of them. Vanessa Brooks leaned against James's mahogany desk, her tailored suit accentuating curves that had caught the attention of every financial magazine in the country. As chief financial officer of Whitmore Properties, she'd transformed the company's portfolios, and after a decade of patient cultivation, had nearly secured her position as the next Mrs. Whitmore. James pinched the bridge of his nose. "The Highland Creek development isn't for sale, period. It's underperforming, James. The offers are generous. It was Emily's project." His tone ended the discussion. Vanessa straightened, a flash of irritation crossing her features before melting into practiced sympathy. "Darling, I understand the sentimental value, but Emily would want the company to thrive." James looked up, meeting her gaze. "Don't tell me what Emily would want." The silence that followed was interrupted by a knock. Ethan stood in the doorway, backpack slung over one shoulder. "Ready for our dinner, Dad? Or are you buried in paperwork again?" Relief washed over James's face. "Not tonight. I promised you'd have my undivided attention, and you will." He stood and grabbed his jacket. "The quarterly reports can wait, Vanessa." She masked her displeasure with a smile. "Of course, where are you boys off to?" "The club? Somewhere quieter," James replied. "Ethan found a place. Some little restaurant outside the city," Ethan added. "Supposed to have amazing pie." Vanessa placed a hand on James's arm. "You'll be back for our nightcap. Don't wait up, this might be a late one." As they departed, Vanessa watched them through the glass walls of the executive suite, her polished fingernails tapping rhythmically against her tablet. When they disappeared into the elevator, she dialed a number. "Garrett, it's me. We may have a problem with James." Granny Betty's kitchen was exactly what Ethan had promised. Unassuming, warm, and mercifully devoid of business associates who would interrupt their evening with market talk. A bell jingled as they entered the half-full restaurant, where mismatched chairs and checkered tablecloths created an atmosphere of genuine comfort. "Not your usual scene," Ethan commented as they settled into a corner booth. James loosened his tie. "That's precisely why I like it." A middle-aged waitress with auburn hair approached their table. "Evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Granny Betty's, I'm Hope." And I'll be taking care of you tonight. Hope. James tested the name. That's nice. She smiled, distributing menus. Betty's pot roast is the special tonight. Comes with mashed potatoes that'll make you forget your troubles. Sounds perfect, James replied, not bothering to open the menu. Same for me, Ethan added. And can we see the pie selection later? I heard they're legendary. Betty will be flattered. Be right back with some cornbread, as Hope turned. Her pendant swung forward, catching the light. Ethan froze mid-reach for his water glass. Dad, he whispered urgently. Her necklace. It's exactly like Mom's. James's gaze snapped to the retreating figure, focusing on the crescent moon pendant with its emerald stone, identical to the one Emily had treasured, passed down through generations of women in her family. That's not possible, James muttered. But he had already half risen from his seat, his face draining of color. Hope returned with a basket of cornbread, setting it down before noticing James's intense stare. Is everything all right, sir? James seemed unable to speak, his eyes fixed not just on the pendant now, but on Hope's face. Despite subtle scarring near her temple and hair styled differently than in the photographs adorning his home, the resemblance was undeniable. Your pendant, Ethan said, filling the awkward silence. It's beautiful. Is it a family heirloom? Hope's hand instinctively rose to touch it. I'm not sure, actually. I've just always had it. Always. James found his voice. Hope shifted uncomfortably. As long as I can remember. Before James could press further, an older woman emerged from the kitchen, her stern face surveying the restaurant like a captain on deck. Her eyes narrowed when she spotted Hope conversing with the Whitmores. Hope, order up for table 6. Coming, Betty. Hope seemed relieved for the interruption. Excuse me, gentlemen. Your pot roast will be right out. Betty intercepted Hope before she reached the kitchen, whispering something that made Hope glance back at their table with obvious discomfort. That's her, James said quietly. It can't be, but it is. Ethan watched Hope moving between tables. The timing fits. 12 years. And that pendant. Mom's pendant. No way it's a coincidence. She doesn't recognize us. Didn't even react to our name. But those scars on her temple. What if... Don't. James interrupted. Don't say it. Don't make me hope. But hope had already taken root. An unwelcome, dangerous sensation James had forbidden himself for years. Their meal arrived, delivered by a different server. Hope remained visibly occupied across the restaurant, never approaching their table again. James barely touched his food, his attention fixed on the woman with his dead wife's face and pendant. We need to find out more, Ethan insisted as they paid their bill. If there's even the slightest chance, I'll handle it, James said firmly. This stays between us for now. No one else. Especially not Vanessa. The lights of Whitmore Estate glittered like fallen stars as James pulled into the circular driveway well past midnight. The dinner with Ethan had stretched into hours of tense speculation at a roadside coffee shop, followed by a visit to the storage locker where James kept Emily's personal effects. Photos, albums, anything to cross-reference against the woman they'd seen. Vanessa met him in the grand foyer, a silk robe wrapped around her slender frame. You're later than expected. I told you not to wait up. When a man says that, a smart woman does exactly the opposite. She studied his face. You look shaken. What happened? Nothing. Just lost track of time with Ethan. He moved past her toward the stairs. James. Her voice stopped him. We're getting married in 3 months. Whatever you're not telling me, I deserve to know. He turned, seeing the calculation behind her concern. Some ghosts are mine alone to face. Vanessa. Good night. Alone in his study, James unlocked a drawer and removed a business card he'd kept for 12 years. Jack Thompson, private investigator. The only detective who'd questioned the official version of Emily's accident. The man who'd been forced off the case under mysterious circumstances. He dialed the number, unsurprised when it went to voicemail at this hour. Thompson, it's James Whitmore. I need your help. I think Emily might be alive. In her small apartment above the restaurant, Hope sat at the edge of Riley's bed, watching her daughter sleep. The girl's math textbooks were piled on the nightstand, pages marked with sticky notes covered in Riley's neat handwriting. Who were those men? Hope whispered to the empty room. Why did they look at me that way? She touched her pendant, remembering the shock on the older man's face, like he'd seen something impossible, and Betty's stern warning, "Stay away from those two. Trouble follows money like that." But it wasn't just Betty's warning making her uneasy. It was the strange sense of familiarity she'd felt. Not recognition, exactly, but something deeper, like a distant echo or a forgotten dream. For the first time in years, Hope questioned Betty's insistence that the past was better left buried, because tonight, for just a moment when that man had looked into her eyes, something deep within her had stirred, a fragment of memory too distant to grasp, but undeniably there. Jack Thompson looked like a man who'd seen too much and slept too little. His office, tucked above a decades-old hardware store, matched his weathered appearance, functional but frayed at the edges. The private investigator studied James Whitmore from across a desk cluttered with case files and coffee-stained notepads. "Let me get this straight," Thompson said, rubbing his stubbled jaw. 12 years after your wife's presumed death, you walk into some random diner and find a waitress wearing Emily's heirloom pendant. James pushed a manila folder across the desk. "It's her, Jack. I'd stake everything on it." Thompson flipped through the folder. Photographs of Emily side by side with surreptitious shots Ethan had taken at the restaurant. Close-ups of the distinctive crescent pendant. "The resemblance is striking," he admitted. "But people look alike all the time. And pendants can be duplicated. Not this one." James tapped the image. "That emerald has a natural flaw. A tiny inclusion shaped like a teardrop. Emily's grandmother called it the angel's tear. It's visible under the right light." Thompson leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. "Why come to me?" "You've got resources for high-end private security. Because you were the only detective who questioned the official investigation. The only one who suggested something wasn't right before they forced you off the case." Thompson's eyes darkened. "Cost me my career. I need someone who isn't afraid to look where others won't. Someone with no connections to whoever shut down the real investigation 12 years ago." The investigator studied James for a long moment. "If, and that's a big if, this woman is Emily, why hasn't she contacted you? Where's she been for 12 years? That's what I need you to find out." Thompson pulled out a notepad. "Tell me everything about the night at the restaurant." Riley fidgeted with her uniform tie as Hope straightened it for the third time. "Mom, it's fine. You're making it worse. Sorry, sweetie. First day at a new school. I'm more nervous than you are." Riley rolled her eyes. "It's the middle of the semester, and it's just school." But it wasn't just any school. Westridge Academy was Nashville's most prestigious private school, with tuition costs that had made Hope's eyes water when she'd seen the brochure. The anonymous scholarship that had arrived in their mailbox seemed like a miracle, or a mistake. "I still don't understand how you got selected," Hope said, smoothing her daughter's blazer. "Because I'm a math genius," Riley grinned. "That's what Mr. Peterson said when he recommended me." Hope kissed her forehead. "Genius is right. Now remember, if anyone makes you feel unwelcome..." I know. I belong there as much as anyone." Riley hefted her backpack. "Gotta go, or I'll miss the bus." After Riley left, Hope found Betty sitting at the restaurant's corner table, going through receipts with a magnifying glass. Her reading glasses perched atop her head. "She get off okay?" Betty asked without looking up. "Yes. Still worried someone's going to realize that scholarship was meant for someone else." Betty's pencil stilled. "That child earned her spot. Don't let anyone tell you different." Hope sat down, lowering her voice though the restaurant was empty. "Betty, why would someone anonymously pay for Riley to attend the most expensive school in Nashville? It doesn't make sense. Some rich folks like to do good without getting thanked." Betty pushed aside her ledger. "You should be happy for the opportunity." "I am, but..." Hope hesitated. "Those men who were in here last week, the ones you told me to avoid." The older one kept staring at my pendant. Betty's expression hardened. "What of it?" He looked at me like he recognized me. "Probably just another man thinking he can charm his way under your skirt." "No, it wasn't like that. It was almost like he'd seen a ghost." Betty's weathered hand closed over Hope's. "Listen to me, 12 years ago. I found you half dead on that road. Whatever happened before that nearly killed you. Some things are better left in the past. But Riley deserves to know where she comes from, who her father is. That child has everything she needs. A mother who loves her." Betty's tone softened. "Now help me with these breakfast muffins before the morning rush." Hope recognized Betty's diversionary tactics, but let the subject drop. As she mixed batter, her thoughts drifted to the stranger at the restaurant. There had been something in his eyes. Grief, shock, and something else she couldn't name. Ethan Whitmore slouched in his chair, half-heartedly taking notes on chemical equations. Westridge Academy's rigorous curriculum usually engaged him, but today his mind was elsewhere, calculating the odds that Hope could actually be his mother. "Mr. Whitmore, perhaps you'd like to demonstrate how to balance this equation." Ethan straightened, glancing at the whiteboard. "Sorry, Doctor." "Lung. Which one?" The chemistry teacher sighed. "The one I've been discussing for the past 10 minutes. Before Ethan could respond, the classroom door opened. The principal entered, followed by a girl Ethan had never seen before. "Dr. Lung, sorry to interrupt. This is our new scholarship student, Riley Carson. She's joining your advanced chemistry section." The girl was slender, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Something about her posture, the way she assessed the room with quiet confidence, caught Ethan's attention. Dr. Lung adjusted her glasses. "We're in the middle of a lesson. But, very well, Mrs. Carson. Please take the empty seat beside Mr. Whitmore. He'll catch you up." Riley slid into the chair next to Ethan, placing a pristine notebook on the desk. "Ethan," he offered quietly, "welcome to chemical hell." A small smile tugged at her lips. "Riley, and balancing that equation isn't that difficult." Ethan raised an eyebrow as Riley wrote the solution in her notebook with quick, decisive strokes, then slid it toward him. The answer was elegant and correct. "Chemistry genius," he whispered. "Math, actually. Chemistry's just applied math with explosions." When class ended, Ethan found himself walking alongside Riley toward the cafeteria. "So, scholarship student, that's impressive. Westridge doesn't hand those out easily." Riley shrugged. "Someone anonymous decided I was worth investing in. It's weird, but Mom says not to question good fortune." "Your mom sounds wise." "She is. She's also the best waitress at Granny Betty's kitchen." Ethan nearly stumbled. "Your mom works at Granny Betty's?" "Yeah. Since before I was born." Riley looked at him curiously. "Why? Have you been there?" "Once last week with my dad." Ethan studied her face, the shape of her eyes, the slight dimple when she smiled. The resemblance to the photographs in his father's study was subtle but unmistakable. "We should be lab partners," he blurted. "For the semester project." Riley seemed surprised. "Don't you already have a partner?" "I'm the new kid." "Nope, free agent." It was a lie. He'd have to make excuses to Jason later. "Besides, anyone who calls chemistry math with explosions is clearly my intellectual soulmate." Riley laughed, and something twisted in Ethan's chest. He knew that laugh, had heard it in old videos of his mother, recordings he'd watched until the edges of the tapes frayed. "Let me see your schedule," he said, trying to keep his voice casual. "Maybe we have other classes together." As Riley handed over her timetable, Ethan made a decision. He needed to get closer to this girl, to find out everything about her and her mother. Because if his suspicions were correct, Riley Carson wasn't just his new lab partner, she was his sister. Vanessa Brooks' heels clicked rhythmically against the marble floor of Whitmore Tower's executive level. Employees nodded deferentially as she passed, her reputation for ruthless efficiency preceding her like a cold front. She paused at James's office door, finding it locked. Unusual for mid-morning. His assistant looked up apologetically. Mr. Whitmore called in. "Personal day." "Personal day," Vanessa repeated, the words foreign on her tongue. In 10 years. James had never taken an unplanned absence. Did he say why? "No, Ms. Brooks, just that he wouldn't be in." "I see." Her crimson smile didn't reach her eyes. "Reschedule my afternoon. Something's come up." 30 minutes later, Vanessa swept into the sleek offices of Brooks Legal Solutions, where her brother Garrett maintained the family's less publicized business interests. She found him reviewing documents, his Italian suit and carefully groomed appearance a mirror image of her own polished exterior. "This better be important," he said without looking up. "The Martinez laundering structure needs—" "James is investigating something." Vanessa closed the door. "He's been distracted since visiting some diner last week. Now he's taking personal days." Garrett set down his pen. "Probably wedding jitters, you're overthinking." I found a receipt in his jacket. He's hired Jack Thompson. Her brother's casual demeanor vanished. The ex-cop, the one who kept asking questions after we handled the Emily situation. The very same. Garrett stood, moving to the window overlooking the Nashville skyline. What exactly did James see at this restaurant? I don't know yet, but he and Ethan have been whispering, stopping conversations when I enter rooms. Vanessa's perfectly manicured nails drummed against her handbag. I need you to find out what Thompson is investigating. Consider it done. Garrett turned, his expression calculating. If this threatens our arrangement, we may need to implement contingency measures. Let's not be dramatic. It's probably nothing. We said that 12 years ago, and it nearly cost us everything. His voice hardened. If there's even a hint this connects to Emily, we handle it immediately. Permanently this time. Across town, in a secluded corner of Westridge Academy's library, Ethan and Riley huddled over their chemistry project. For 2 weeks, they'd been inseparable, drawn together by their shared intellect and Ethan's carefully concealed agenda. Your approach to the molecular modeling is brilliant, Ethan said, genuinely impressed by Riley's work. Where did you learn to think like that? Riley shrugged. It just makes sense to me. Mom says I get my brains from the mystery donor. Mystery donor. Ethan kept his tone casual while his heart raced. My biological father, Mom doesn't remember him. Doesn't remember anything from before her accident. Riley looked up, catching Ethan's intense gaze. What? Nothing, just... What kind of accident? Head trauma. Happened before I was born. Riley twisted a pencil between her fingers. She has amnesia. Dissociative, the doctors call it. 12 years and still nothing. Ethan's mind whirled. The timeline matched perfectly. That must be hard for both of you. Sometimes Mom tries to hide it, but I know she wonders who she was before. Riley's voice grew quiet. I catch her staring at her reflection sometimes, like she's looking for clues. And the pendant she wears? Was that from before? It's the only thing she had when Betty found her. Riley tilted her head. You ask a lot of questions about my mom. Ethan backpedaled. Just curious. My family situation is complicated too. Your dad's James Whitmore, right? Of Whitmore Properties? That's hardly complicated. That's privileged. Money doesn't fix everything. Ethan hesitated, then decided to risk it. My mom died when I was 5. Or at least, we think she died. Riley's expression softened. I'm sorry, that's awful. There was an accident. Her car went off a mountain road. Ethan pulled out his phone, finding a saved photograph. This is her. Riley studied the image. A beautiful woman with auburn hair and intelligent eyes, cradling a young Ethan in her arms. Around her neck hung a crescent moon pendant with an emerald stone. Riley's eyes widened. That necklace looks exactly like your mom's. Right. Ethan watched her carefully. Family heirloom, passed down through generations of women in my family. Riley pushed the phone back toward him, suddenly uncomfortable. It's probably just similar. There must be thousands like it. With the same emerald flaw, the angel's tear. How would you know about my mom's? Riley stopped, realization dawning. You've been using me? This friendship, the project? You're investigating my mother? Ethan reached for her hand, but she pulled away. It's not like that, I think. We think. Your mom might be my mom. That's insane. Riley gathered her books. My mom would know if she had another child. Not if she has amnesia. Riley, the timing fits. The pendant is identical, and you have my grandmother's eyes. Stop it. Riley stood abruptly. My mom works 60 hours a week at a diner. She lives in a 2-room apartment above a restaurant. She's not some missing socialite. Let me show you something else, Ethan pleaded. Just hear me out. Riley hesitated, torn between anger and curiosity. You have 5 minutes. Hope wiped down tables mechanically, her mind elsewhere. The lunch rush had ended, leaving the restaurant in that peaceful lull before dinner preparations began. She startled when the bell above the door jingled. Thompson stood in the entrance, looking exactly like the type of man Betty had warned her about. World-weary eyes that missed nothing. We're between services, Hope said. Kitchen's closed till 5. Just coffee if you're serving. He settled at the counter. Nice place. Been here long. Hope poured his coffee. Granny Betty's. It's an institution. Been around 30 years. And you? How long have you worked here? Something in his tone made her wary. Long enough. You're not here for the coffee, are you? Thompson smiled slightly. Smart, though the coffee's not bad. He sipped appreciatively. I'm looking into some local history. Thought you might help. I'm not exactly a Nashville expert. I'm more interested in Colorado history, specifically an accident in the mountains about 12 years back. Hope's hand trembled slightly as she refilled his cup. Why would I know anything about that? Just a hunch. Thompson placed a business card on the counter. If you ever want to talk about it, or about that unique pendant you're wearing, give me a call. As he turned to leave, Hope called after him. Who sent you? Thompson paused at the door. Someone who's been grieving a long time. Someone who deserves answers. After he left, Hope clutched the counter. Her heart racing inexplicably, she reached for the business card, turning it over in her fingers. Jack Thompson, private investigator. The door to the kitchen swung open as Betty emerged, immediately noticing Hope's pallor. What happened? Who was that man? A detective asking about Colorado and my pendant. Betty's face hardened. I warned you about talking to strangers. He knew about my amnesia, Betty. He knew I was from Colorado. Coincidence? Is it? Hope challenged. First those men in the restaurant, now this detective. Something's happening and you know more than you're telling me. Betty's shoulders slumped slightly. Hope? No more deflections. Hope's voice rose. For 12 years I've trusted you, but I deserve to know who I am, and Riley deserves to know where she comes from. The older woman seemed to age before Hope's eyes. There are things you don't understand, dangerous things. Then help me understand. Because I'm going to find out one way or another. Betty stared at the detective's card in Hope's hand, a decision visibly weighing on her lined face. Not here. Tonight. After closing. There are things you need to know. And in James Whitmore's home office, Thompson laid out his preliminary findings. Medical records obtained through questionable channels. Witness statements from 12 years earlier. Hope Carson appeared in Nashville 12 years ago, almost to the day of Emily's disappearance, he explained. Hospitalized with severe head trauma and amnesia. The woman who found her, Elizabeth Betty Reynolds, claimed she was wandering along a remote road. James studied the medical reports. And she was pregnant. About 8 weeks along. According to these records, doctors were worried the trauma might affect the pregnancy, but the girl, Riley, was born healthy. James calculated silently. That would mean Emily was pregnant when she disappeared. She never told me. The report says Hope would wake up screaming a name, Ethan. Thompson watched James carefully. Your son's name. James pressed his palms against his eyes. This is really happening, isn't it? She's alive. There's more. Thompson hesitated. I did some digging on Betty Reynolds before Nashville. She worked in Colorado as a housekeeper for a wealthy family. What family? Yours, James. Betty Reynolds was your housekeeper until Vanessa fired her 13 years ago for alleged theft. Betty Reynolds was our housekeeper. James paced his office, struggling to process Thompson's revelation. I remember someone Emily liked. An older woman Vanessa insisted was stealing. Betty worked for your family for nearly 7 years. Thompson confirmed. Left right before your wedding anniversary. The one before Emily's accident. James stopped abruptly. Emily was devastated when Betty left. She never believed the theft accusations. Because there probably wasn't any theft. Thompson tapped a folder. I checked Betty's background after she left your employ. No criminal record, spotless employment history. Then suddenly she's buying a small restaurant in Nashville with cash. You think Vanessa paid her off. But why? That's what we need to find out. Thompson leaned forward. James, if Betty has been hiding Emily all these years, she had a reason. A damn good one. James collapsed into his chair. Emily would never voluntarily abandon Ethan. Never. I agree. Which means whatever happened on that mountain road was just the beginning. Thompson's voice hardened. Someone wanted Emily gone when the accident didn't finish the job. Betty hid her. From who? Me. Or from whoever arranged the accident. James's phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Dad, we need to talk. About Riley. We're running out of time, James said. Ethan's been getting close to the girl, to Riley. If she's really Emily's daughter, then she's your daughter too. Thompson stood, and the chances of keeping this quiet just got a whole lot slimmer. Riley followed Ethan through the winding mountain road, her skepticism battling with growing curiosity. He'd driven them nearly 2 hours outside Nashville, into the densely wooded foothills of the Appalachians. "This is kidnapping, you know," she said, only half joking. "Luring me into the middle of nowhere. It's not kidnapping if you came willingly." Ethan turned onto an unmarked gravel path. "We're almost there." "Where exactly is there?" "My mom's special place. Her family owned it for generations." The trees opened to reveal a small clearing where a rustic cabin stood, its wide porch facing a breathtaking mountain view. The cabin looked well-maintained, but undeniably empty. A place preserved in time. "Mom called it her thinking place," Ethan explained, retrieving a key from under a weathered planter. "Dad's kept it exactly as she left it." Riley hung back. "Should we be here? This feels private." "You have more right to be here than almost anyone." Ethan unlocked the door. "If I'm right," inside. The cabin was a perfect time capsule. A half-read book still marked with a faded bookmark. A sweater draped over a chair as if its owner had just stepped out. Dust covers protected the furniture, but couldn't disguise the feeling of suspended animation. Riley moved cautiously through the space, drawn to a wall of photographs. Emily Whitmore smiled from every frame, hiking, laughing with friends, holding a young Ethan. "She was beautiful," Riley whispered. "She was brilliant too. Harvard Law, could have been a Supreme Court justice, but chose to work on sustainable housing initiatives instead." Ethan watched Riley studying the photos. "Dad says you have her exact mind. Mathematical, precise, but creative too." Riley turned sharply. "Your dad doesn't even know me. He's been watching you since you started at Westridge." Ethan moved to a roll-top desk in the corner. "This is why we came." He pressed a hidden mechanism beneath the desk edge. A small compartment popped open in what had appeared to be solid wood. "Mom showed me this when I was little. Our secret place for treasures." Ethan reached in, withdrawing a leather-bound journal. "I found this last week." Riley took the journal hesitantly. The first pages contained meticulous notes on financial transactions, wire transfers, offshore accounts, property deals with names unfamiliar to her. "I don't understand." "What is this?" "Evidence of money laundering through Whitmore Properties. Mom was investigating it secretly." Ethan turned to the final entries, read the last page. Riley flipped to the end, the handwriting more hurried. May 17th. Confronted Garrett with evidence. He denied everything, then threatened me. Said I don't understand who I'm dealing with. He's right. I don't know how deep this goes, but I know James isn't involved. Taking this to him tonight at dinner. 2 pieces of life-changing news in one evening. The fraud. And the baby. 8 weeks along according to Dr. Winters, a sibling for Ethan, haven't told James yet, was saving it for our anniversary dinner. Riley's hands trembled. This is dated. The day Mom disappeared. 8 weeks pregnant. Ethan's voice was soft. You were born exactly 7 months after that date. Riley, she backed away, shaking her head. This doesn't prove anything. The pendant, the timing, your math abilities, exactly like hers. Your eyes, her mother's eyes. Ethan stepped closer. And now there's this journal, mentioning Garrett Brooks, Vanessa's brother, who my dad trusts to handle legal matters. You think these people, your dad's fiancé and her brother, tried to kill your mom. That's insane. Is it? Mom discovers fraud, confronts Garrett, and conveniently disappears the same day. Ethan took the journal back. And now your mom, who appeared out of nowhere with amnesia and a crescent moon pendant, happens to have a daughter born 7 months later. Riley sank onto a dust-covered sofa. If, and this is a massive if, you're right. Why hasn't your detective friend found proof? Why hasn't your dad recognized my mom? The detective is gathering evidence as we speak. And Dad, Ethan hesitated. He does recognize her. He just can't believe it's possible. Riley stood suddenly. I need to talk to my mom. Hope sat alone in the darkened restaurant. Waiting for Betty to finish closing the kitchen, her mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. The detective's card lay before her on the table, a gateway to answers she'd both craved and feared. The kitchen door swung open as Betty emerged, looking older than Hope had ever seen her. Before I start, Betty said, lowering herself into a chair. "I need you to understand something. Everything I've done, everything, was to protect you and that child. Protect us from what, Betty? From the people who tried to kill you." Betty's voice was steady despite the enormity of her words. "The people who pushed your car off that mountain road and left you for dead." Hope's mouth went dry. "You know who I was." "I've always known." Betty reached across the table, taking Hope's trembling hands. "Your name is Emily Whitmore. You were a brilliant lawyer who married into one of the wealthiest families in Colorado. You had a 5-year-old son named Ethan." "Ethan," Hope whispered, the name stirring something deep within her. "I used to dream about that name. You'd call out for him in your sleep," Betty confirmed. "Every night for months after I found you. If what you're saying is true, if I have a son, why didn't you take me back to him?" "To my family," Hope's voice rose. "How could you keep a mother from her child? Because the people who tried to kill you were part of that family," Betty said grimly. "And they would have finished the job if they knew you survived." Hope stood abruptly, moving to the window as if she could physically distance herself from Betty's revelations. Who wanted me dead?" "Vanessa Brooks and her brother Garrett. She was your husband's CFO, and had ambitions far beyond that position. When you discovered their money laundering scheme, they arranged your accident. And my husband James." The name felt strange on Hope's tongue. "James adored you, but he trusted Vanessa completely with the business. She made sure of that." Betty's voice softened. "He spent a fortune searching for you, nearly drove himself mad with grief." Hope touched her pendant, the familiar gesture now laden with new meaning. "And this, your family heirloom, you refused to take it off. Even unconscious in the hospital, the doctor said it might be your brain's way of holding on to something essential." The bell above the door jingled, interrupting the moment. Hope turned to see Riley burst in, her face flushed from running. "Mom?" Riley stopped short, taking in the intensity of the scene before her. "What's going on?" Hope looked from Riley to Betty, momentarily unable to speak. "I was just telling your mother some important truths," Betty said carefully. Riley moved closer, her expression uncharacteristically uncertain. "About who she really is. About Emily Whitmore." Both women stared at Riley in shock. "How did you—" Hope began. "Ethan showed me. The cabin. The journal." Riley's voice quavered. He thinks I'm his sister." Hope's knees buckled, forcing her back into her chair. "Sister," Betty nodded slowly. "The boy figured it out, smart, like his mother." She turned to Riley. "Yes, child, Ethan Whitmore is your half-brother, and your mother is Emily Whitmore." Riley pulled something from her backpack, a photograph in a silver frame. She placed it before Hope. Emily Whitmore holding a young Ethan, both smiling into the camera, a crescent moon pendant gleaming at her throat. "That's you, Mom," Riley whispered. "That's us." Hope stared at the image, her hand unconsciously rising to touch the identical pendant at her neck. And for the first time in 12 years, a memory surfaced, clear and undeniable, of holding a small boy in her arms, his laughter echoing across a sunlit garden. "Ethan," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "My son." James Whitmore had imagined this moment countless times over 12 years. The impossible reunion, the miraculous return. In his dreams, Emily would appear unchanged, their life resuming as if the nightmare had never happened. Reality proved messier. He sat rigidly in Betty's small office behind the restaurant kitchen, trying to reconcile the woman before him. Hope, with her waitress uniform and cautious demeanor, with the wife he'd mourned. "You look exactly like her," he said finally, breaking the tense silence. "Except for the scars." Hope, Emily, touched the faint marks near her temple self-consciously. "From the accident, I guess. They said you were dead." His voice caught. "I looked for you, for months, hired private search teams, hounded the police." "I know," Betty interjected from her position by the door. "I followed the news. You nearly bankrupted yourself searching." James turned to the older woman, anger flashing. "You knew all along. You let me believe she was dead." "I let you believe what would keep her alive," Betty countered, unflinching. "Vanessa and Garrett would have finished the job if they knew she survived. You have no proof they were involved." "I have Emily's journal," Ethan said. Entering the cramped office with Riley hovering uncertainly behind him, he placed the leather-bound book on the desk. Mom documented everything about the money laundering. She confronted Garrett the day she disappeared. James stared at his son. When had Ethan grown so tall, so assured? Then at the girl beside him. Riley, his daughter. The realization hit him with physical force. "Have you read this?" he asked Ethan, indicating the journal. "Most of it." Ethan's expression was apologetic. "I needed to understand what happened." James turned to Hope, Emily. "Do you remember any of this? The fraud investigation? Confronting Garrett?" She shook her head, frustration evident. "I have. Fragments. Since seeing the photograph, more keeps coming back. But it's like trying to catch smoke." She held Riley's hand tightly. "I remember Ethan, though. His laughter. Reading him bedtime stories." Riley squeezed her mother's hand. "Mom talked to a specialist this morning. He says traumatic amnesia can sometimes break with the right triggers. Dr. Winters thinks seeing more familiar places and objects might help," Hope explained. "But he warns there's no guarantee all memories will return." James absorbed this, studying the woman who was both stranger and soulmate. "Thompson's arranging DNA tests to confirm that Riley is your daughter," Betty finished bluntly. "Look at her, James. She has your mother's eyes, Emily's mathematical mind." James's gaze shifted to Riley, truly seeing her for the first time. The girl met his scrutiny with a directness that was painfully familiar. Emily's unflinching assessment. "I don't need a DNA test," he said softly, "but we'll do it anyway, for legal purposes." "Legal purposes," Hope echoed, "to establish your identity, your rights, Riley's rights." James straightened. "To protect you both when we take action against Vanessa and Garrett." Ethan exchanged a worried glance with Riley. "Dad, we need solid proof. Vanessa practically runs your company. Garrett handles all your legal affairs. They've had 12 years to cover their tracks." The journal is circumstantial at best, Betty interrupted, "and you'd have to explain how you got it, which puts these children at risk." "We need more than suspicions," Hope agreed. "I've lived with uncertainty for 12 years. I can wait until we're sure." James studied her, recognizing Emily's methodical thinking beneath Hope's cautious exterior. "What do you suggest?" She hesitated. "I think I should see the house, where we lived. Maybe it will trigger more memories." "Absolutely not," James and Betty said simultaneously. "Vanessa lives there now," James continued. "If she saw you, she's in Chicago until tomorrow night," Ethan supplied. "Quarterly investors meeting." James shot his son a look that suggested this conversation would continue later. "It's too dangerous." "Not if we're careful," Hope countered. "Dr. Winters said, familiar environments are powerful memory triggers. I need to remember, James. Not just fragments, but everything. Especially about the fraud investigation. That's our best weapon against them." Her determination, so characteristically Emily, weakened James's resolve. "A brief visit while Vanessa's away. Just the house, not the office." "What about the test results?" Riley asked. "The DNA test to prove who we are." "Thompson's expediting them." James checked his watch. "Should have preliminary results by tomorrow morning." "And then what?" Hope's voice was quiet. "If they confirm what we all believe, what happens then?" The question hung in the air, its implications staggering. James's life, carefully reassembled after shattering 12 years ago, faced another seismic shift. "We take back what's yours," he said finally. "Your identity, your family, your life." Hope looked at Riley, then Ethan. Her expression conflicted. "And what about Hope Carson? The life I've built, the person I've become?" No one had an answer. Vanessa Brooks ended her video call with a sharp click. Dissatisfied with the Chicago team's projections, the hotel suite offered spectacular views of Lake Michigan, but she found herself unable to appreciate them, her thoughts returning obsessively to James's strange behavior. Her phone buzzed with a text from Garrett. Following confirmed. Jay visited restaurant again, met with unknown woman and Thompson. "Need to talk ASAP." She dialed immediately. Unknown woman. Description. "My guy couldn't get close enough without being spotted." Garrett's voice was tense. "But he saw Thompson there. And the son, Ethan's involved." This was unexpected. What about the scholarship girl? Present. Garrett paused. Vanessa, we have a problem. Thompson accessed old medical records, specifically from County General 12 years ago. Cold dread settled in her stomach. Emily's accident records? No. Records for a Jane Doe admitted around the same time. Head trauma. Amnesia. His voice lowered. Pregnant. Vanessa gripped the phone tighter. That's impossible. We made sure the car was completely destroyed. Well, someone survived and Thompson's connecting dots. Garrett's tone sharpened. We need to implement containment measures. No. Vanessa moved to the window. Mind racing. Nothing drastic. Not yet. I'm coming back tonight instead of tomorrow. Have the jet ready. This isn't something we can finesse, Vanessa. If there's even a possibility Emily survived. I said no. Her voice left no room for argument. 12 years ago, we panicked and made a mess. I won't make the same mistake. She ended the call. Turning back to her laptop to book an earlier flight, a notification flashed on her screen. A reminder of her appointment with the obstetrician tomorrow afternoon. Vanessa placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach, a cold smile forming on her lips. Emily Whitmore might have survived once, but Vanessa now carried the ultimate insurance policy. James would never leave the mother of his unborn child, especially not for a ghost. The Whitmore estate appeared even more imposing at twilight, its sprawling grounds and colonial architecture speaking of old money and privilege. Hope, Emily stood at the property's edge, a flood of contradictory emotions washing over her, familiarity and alienation battling for dominance. We can still turn back, James said quietly, watching her face. No, I need this. She took a steadying breath and moved toward the house. Inside, the grand foyer triggered an immediate response. Her hand automatically reached for the console table where she'd always dropped her keys. The muscle memory was so natural that it stopped her in her tracks. I knew this place, she whispered. I lived here. James nodded, watching her carefully. For 7 years, she moved through the formal living room, studies, and kitchen with increasing confidence, occasionally stopping to touch objects or peer more closely at photographs. In James's study, she paused before a chess set. You never could beat me, she said suddenly, the memory surfacing unbidden. You'd get frustrated and claim I was breaking the rules. James smiled, his eyes suspiciously bright. You were ruthless on the chessboard. Her hand drifted to her pendant, a gesture James had seen thousands of times. The gardens, she said. Show me the rose gardens. They walked through French doors onto a terrace overlooking what had once been Emily's pride. Meticulously planned rose gardens now reduced to a more manageable but less inspired landscape. She removed them, Hope said, anger coloring her voice for the first time. My grandmother's heritage roses, the English varieties I spent years cultivating. Vanessa said they required too much maintenance. James admitted. I should have stopped her. Hope turned toward the house, her gaze drawn to an upstairs window. Ethan's room was there and ours. She pointed to the master suite. May I? James hesitated. Vanessa and I. It's our room now. The implication hung between them. Of course Vanessa would sleep in the master bedroom. She was his fiancée. I understand, Hope said, though her eyes reflected hurt. What about Ethan's old room? Unchanged. Vanessa wanted to convert it to a home gym, but I wouldn't allow it. They climbed the grand staircase, Hope trailing her hand along the banister with unconscious familiarity. At Ethan's childhood bedroom, she paused, her hand on the doorknob. I used to read to him here, she said softly. Every night, Peter Pan was his favorite. James watched as she entered. Moving unerringly to the bookshelf where a worn copy of Peter Pan still stood, she opened it to find an inscription in elegant handwriting. To my darling Ethan, who teaches me to believe in magic every day. All my love. Mom. Hope traced the words with trembling fingers, then sank onto the edge of the small bed, silent tears streaming down her face. I wrote this, she whispered. I remember writing this. James knelt before her, taking her hands. You're remembering. That's good, but not enough. She wiped her tears. Not the important parts. The fraud, the confrontation with Garrett. Without that, we have nothing to stop them. We have you, James said firmly. Alive, that's everything. Hope met his gaze. her eyes suddenly sharp with Emily's intelligence. "Take me to your office building tonight. If I confronted Garrett there, being in that space might trigger those specific memories. It's too risky. Security cameras, night staff. James," her voice took on a familiar tone of determination. "I need those memories. We need them. For Riley, for Ethan, for us." In that moment, looking into her eyes, James couldn't deny her anything. Emily had always been his strength and his weakness, and apparently, Hope was no different. "All right," he conceded. "But first, we get those DNA results. We'll need every advantage when we finally confront them." Hope nodded, her hand instinctively finding his. The gesture was so natural, so familiar, that neither of them commented on it. This small reclamation of what had been stolen 12 years before. The DNA results arrived at Thompson's office at precisely 8:17 a.m., an innocuous envelope containing confirmation of what they already knew. Hope watched James's face as he scanned the document, his expression shifting from tension to profound relief. "It's confirmed," he said simply. 99.99% probability that Riley is my biological daughter, and the maternal markers match Emily's DNA from her hairbrush. Hope closed her eyes briefly, the scientific validation hitting her harder than expected. "It's real. I'm really her. You're really you," James corrected gently. Thompson cleared his throat. "This gives us legal standing, but we still need evidence of the attempt on Emily's life to move against Vanessa and Garrett. My memories are coming back, but still nothing concrete about the fraud or confrontation." Hope's frustration was evident. "Just fragments, family moments, the house. The visit to Whitmore Tower might help," James suggested. "Tonight, after hours." Thompson frowned. "Risky move, if Vanessa returns early. Her flight lands at 10 p.m., James countered. "We'll be done by then." "There's another problem," Thompson said, opening his laptop. "Vanessa's pregnancy. I obtained her medical records." "You what?" James looked alarmed. "That's illegal. So is attempted murder." Thompson turned the screen, displaying medical documents. "She's genuinely pregnant, 12 weeks along." James paled visibly. "That's not possible. We've been careful." "Well, someone wasn't." Thompson's tone was matter-of-fact. "And given the timing, I'd bet everything this pregnancy is no accident. She must have sensed you pulling away." Hope watched James struggle with this new complication. "A baby, Vanessa's ultimate insurance policy. This changes nothing," Hope said finally. "She tried to kill me. She kept me from my son for 12 years. Pregnant or not, she needs to face justice." James looked at her gratefully. "You're right, but it does complicate things. The board, the shareholders, they'll see her as a sympathetic figure. Then we need to be absolutely certain before we move," Thompson concluded. "Which means we need those memories, Emily." The name still felt strange, both hers and not hers. Tonight, then, the office. In Riley's bedroom above the restaurant, Ethan watched his half-sister methodically pack a small overnight bag. They'd agreed she would stay at Thompson's place tonight, safer than the apartment she shared with Hope. Given Vanessa's unexpected early return, "You're taking this all remarkably well," Ethan commented. "Finding out your entire life is built on lies." Riley zipped the bag with deliberate precision. "Not lies, just incomplete information." She sat beside him on the bed. "Besides, I've spent my whole life wondering where I came from. Now I know. Still, finding out you have a brother, a father, a whole different identity. Half-brother." She corrected automatically, then softened. "But yeah, it's a lot, especially watching Mom struggling with who she is. Hope or Emily. What do you call her now?" "Mom," Riley said simply. "She's always been that, regardless of her name." Ethan nodded, understanding. "What about James? What will you call him?" Riley considered this. "Not Dad, not yet. That has to be earned." She studied Ethan's face. "Was she good as a mother? I mean, before?" "The best," Ethan answered without hesitation. "She taught me chess when I was 4. Read to me every night. Took me hiking on weekends when Dad was busy with work. She always made time, no matter what." "She's still like that," Riley said softly. "Works double shifts sometimes, but never misses my math competitions, even when she's exhausted." They sat in companionable silence, These two siblings getting to know each other through the shared bridge of their mother. What happens after tonight? Riley finally asked. If Mom remembers everything, and they confront Vanessa, what then? Do we become one big happy family? Ethan hesitated. I don't know, Dad and Vanessa are engaged. She's pregnant. It's complicated. Understatement of the century. Riley's tone was dry. You realize our lives are basically a telenovela now, right? Ethan laughed unexpectedly. Evil stepmother, long-lost mother with amnesia, secret siblings. Yeah, definitely telenovela territory. Don't forget the family fortune and corporate intrigue. Their shared laughter eased the tension, creating a moment of normalcy amid chaos. Whatever happens, Ethan said. We stick together, all of us. Riley nodded. A silent pact formed between them. Hope stood in Betty's cramped bedroom, examining her reflection in the full-length mirror. The black dress Betty had unearthed from a sealed box in the attic fit perfectly, a designer piece from Emily Whitmore's former life. You kept my clothes all these years? Hope asked, smoothing the fabric. Betty, sitting on the edge of the bed, nodded. Just a few things in case you ever remembered. She gestured to the small jewelry box beside her. This too. Hope opened it to find a simple gold wedding band. You were wearing it when I found you, Betty explained. I removed it at the hospital, thought it might raise questions. Hope slipped it onto her finger, the weight both foreign and familiar. Did you ever think about contacting James once you knew we were safe? Every day for the first year, Betty admitted. But by then, you'd settled into being Hope. Riley was thriving, and the news reports showed Vanessa getting closer to James. You thought he'd moved on. I thought the risk wasn't worth it, Betty corrected. Why disrupt all those lives if you were never going to remember? Hope turned from the mirror. And now it's all coming out anyway. Betty's weathered face showed her age. I always knew it would. Eventually. The truth has a way of surfacing. Hope sat beside her, taking the older woman's gnarled hands. I don't blame you, Betty. You saved my life. Saved Riley's life. You gave us a home, an identity. I gave you a fraction of what you deserved. Betty's voice cracked. A waitress's life instead of your real one. My real life is the one I lived, Hope said firmly. Whatever happens next, Hope Carson is as much me as Emily Whitmore. I won't forget that, and I won't forget what you did for us. Betty squeezed her hands. You sound like her now, like Emily. The same quiet strength. A knock interrupted them. James stood in the doorway, his breath catching at the sight of Hope in Emily's dress. The car's ready, he said. Thompson will meet us at the office. Hope nodded, rising. I'm ready. Hope, Betty called as she reached the door. Be careful Vanessa Brooks didn't get where she is by being careless. She's dangerous, especially now that she has everything to lose. Vanessa's flight landed 30 minutes early. As the private jet taxied to a stop, she gathered her belongings, mentally rehearsing her approach. James had been evasive on their brief call, claiming work kept him late at the office, but her sources confirmed he'd visited that diner again. Her phone buzzed with a text from Garrett. Security confirms Jay at the office. Not alone, female companion. Vanessa's perfectly manicured nails dug into her palm. A female companion. In their office, at night. Description, she texted back. Garrett's reply was immediate. Security feed unclear, but definitely not you. Vanessa considered her options. Confronting James directly would reveal her surveillance. Better to catch him off guard. See this mystery woman for herself. Meeting you at the office, she texted Garrett. Be ready. In the car from the airport. Vanessa placed a protective hand over her stomach. The pregnancy had been meticulously planned. A fail-safe she'd hoped not to need. James's paternity wasn't guaranteed, but he would never risk a DNA test that might become public. The mere possibility would be enough to keep him in line. As the car navigated Nashville's night streets, Vanessa's thoughts turned to the scholarship girl. Riley Carson? Thompson's interest in her mother couldn't be coincidence. She opened her tablet, reviewing the surveillance photos of Hope Carson. Auburn hair, similar build to Emily, around the right age. The scars near her temple could easily be from a car accident. And the pendant, that damned family heirloom Emily had always worn. Vanessa zoomed in on the image. Studying the woman's features with growing certainty, She'd assumed Emily dead for 12 years, but if by some miracle she had survived. Faster, she instructed her driver. Change of plans. Take me directly to Whitmore Tower. The executive floor of Whitmore Tower was eerily quiet after hours. Hope moved through the space cautiously, each step feeling both new and strangely familiar. My office was here, she asked, stopping before a door labeled Vice President, Legal Affairs. Yes, James confirmed, though the layouts changed since then. Inside, the office bore no trace of Emily Whitmore. New furnishings, different artwork, all evidence of her existence carefully erased. Hope touched the desk uncertainly. Anything? Thompson asked from the doorway. She shook her head. Nothing specific, just a sense of belonging. Try Garrett's office, James suggested. If that's where the confrontation happened. They moved down the corridor to a corner office with Garrett Brooks, chief legal counsel, on the door. James used his master key to unlock it. Unlike the sanitized space that had once been Emily's office, Garrett's domain remained largely unchanged. The same imposing desk, the same pretentious law books lining the walls. Hope stepped inside, immediately tensing. I've been here before, she said quietly. Recently, in my dreams. James and Thompson exchanged glances. What do you remember? James urged. Hope moved toward the desk, her hand trailing along its edge. Standing here, arguing. I had papers, evidence. Her breathing quickened. He was sitting there, smiling that condescending smile. Said I didn't understand who I was dealing with. The memory crystallized suddenly, vivid and complete. She could see Garrett's face changing from dismissive to threatening, hear his words with perfect clarity. You think James will believe you over his trusted advisor, over his future sister-in-law? Be smart, Emily. Take your evidence and disappear. If this comes out, the company collapses. James loses everything. Is that what you want? He knew, Hope whispered. He knew I was going to James that night. He called Vanessa immediately after I left. She turned to Thompson. Check his records, phone logs from that day. Thompson moved to the computer, but the sound of the elevator arriving on their floor froze them all. Security, James whispered. Thompson shook his head. I have them occupied downstairs. The elevator doors opened, revealing Vanessa Brooks, elegant despite the late hour and long flight. Her eyes narrowed as she took in the scene, focusing finally on Hope. Well, she said, her voice cold and controlled. Emily Whitmore, back from the dead at last. The silence that followed Vanessa's pronouncement seemed to stretch infinitely. Hope stood motionless, her mind racing between fight and flight instincts, as Vanessa's cold gaze assessed her. You look terrible, Emily, Vanessa finally said, stepping fully into the room. Those scars are quite dramatic. Vanessa, James started, moving forward, but Thompson placed a restraining hand on his arm. I'm surprised, Vanessa continued, ignoring James. 12 years as, what? A waitress. Quite the downgrade for Harvard Law's brightest star. Her perfectly painted lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Though I suppose amnesia doesn't leave many career options. Hope found her voice. You knew I survived. Don't be absurd. Vanessa waved dismissively. If I'd known you were alive, you wouldn't be standing here now. The casual admission stunned everyone into silence. That's a confession, Thompson said quietly, reaching for his phone. To what? Vanessa laughed. A hypothetical statement, please. She turned to James, her expression shifting to wounded betrayal. What I'd like to know is how long you've been conducting this little investigation behind my back. While I've been growing our child, you've been... What? Rekindling an old flame. James flinched. This isn't about us. It's about what you and Garrett did 12 years ago. What we did. Vanessa's voice rose slightly. You have no idea what happened 12 years ago. You only have her word. The word of a woman who can't even remember her own name without help. We have evidence, Thompson interjected. Do you? Vanessa's confidence was unnerving. Financial records from 12 years ago that have been audited multiple times. Emily's convenient journal that could have been written yesterday. Or perhaps witness statements from a disgraced ex-cop and a former housekeeper with a grudge. Hope watched the calculated performance with growing clarity. Somewhere in the exchange, another memory had surfaced. Not of the accident, but of Vanessa in the early days, the careful cultivation of James's trust, the subtle undermining of Emily's concerns. "You're good," Hope said quietly. "You always were," making others doubt themselves while appearing completely supportive. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, playing the psychological angle now. Desperate. "No, just remembering." Hope stepped closer. "Like how you convinced James that Betty was stealing when she noticed accounting discrepancies, or how you suggested I was suffering postpartum depression when I questioned certain international transfers." James looked between them, realization dawning. "You isolated her systematically. This is ridiculous." Vanessa touched her stomach protectively. "I won't stand here and be accused by a ghost and her pet detective." "Where's Garrett?" Thompson asked suddenly. "You texted him when you landed. He should be here by now." Vanessa's composure slipped momentarily. "I have no idea what you're talking about." A new voice from the doorway startled them all. "She's lying, as usual." Garrett Brooks stood there, his expensive suit slightly rumpled, his expression grim. "She texted me to meet her here. Said we needed to handle the situation together." Vanessa's face hardened. "Shut up, Garrett." "Why?" He entered the room, looking defeated. "It's over, Vanessa. They know. They suspect," she corrected sharply. "They can't prove anything." "Actually," Thompson interjected, holding up his phone, "we can. I just found the original server backup files from 12 years ago. The ones that mysteriously disappeared during the audit. Emily's evidence was valid." Garrett sank into a chair. "I told you we should have destroyed everything." "Shut up." Vanessa's controlled facade was cracking. Hope moved to stand directly before her. "I remember now, after I left Garrett's office that day. You called me, asked me to meet you on that mountain road before I went home, said you had additional evidence. I was so focused on protecting James and the company that I didn't question why you'd help me." "Pure fantasy," Vanessa sneered, but her eyes darted toward the exit. "You forced me off the road," Hope continued, the memory crystallizing. "I saw your car in my rearview mirror. You kept ramming me until the guardrail gave way." James made a strangled sound. Thompson moved to block the door as Vanessa took a step backward. "You can't prove any of this," she insisted. "It's been 12 years. Physical evidence is long gone." "Not all of it," Thompson countered. "The insurance investigator photographed your car the day after the accident. Front-end damage you claimed happened in a parking lot. I've retrieved those photos. And there's me," Garrett said unexpectedly. Vanessa whirled on her brother. "What are you doing?" "Saving myself?" His voice was resigned. "I didn't know she was pregnant, Vanessa. I didn't know about the kid. That changes things." "Nothing changes anything," Vanessa hissed. "You're implicated as deeply as I am." "Maybe," Garrett straightened, "but attempted murder of a pregnant woman carries a heavier sentence than financial fraud." "I'm not going down for your crime." "Traitor," she spat. "Call it self-preservation." He turned to James. "I'll testify about the fraud, about Vanessa's plan to eliminate Emily, about all of it." Vanessa's hand moved to her stomach, her final play. "James, think about our baby, your child. You wouldn't send its mother to prison." James looked at her with cold determination. "Watch me." 3 weeks later, the grand ballroom of Nashville's Windsor Hotel glittered with the city's elite. What had been planned as James and Vanessa's engagement party had transformed into something entirely different. A public statement that Emily Whitmore was alive, and the Whitmore family reunited. In the anteroom, Hope adjusted her emerald gown, still uncomfortable with the finery that had once been Emily's daily attire. The past weeks had been a whirlwind. Medical evaluations confirming her identity, legal proceedings against Vanessa and Garrett, endless meetings with lawyers and board members. "Ready." James appeared in the doorway, handsome in his tuxedo. "The press is getting restless." "Do we really need all this?" Hope gestured at the spectacle beyond. "Couldn't we just issue a statement?" The board insisted. James approached, adjusting her pendant so it caught the light. "Stock prices are finally stabilizing. They want to project strength and unity, using us as corporate propaganda." Hope sighed. Emily would have hated this. A small smile touched James's lips. Emily organized events like this all the time. She was brilliant at it. "Well, Hope Carson finds it ridiculous." She met his gaze. "That's the problem, isn't it? I'm not fully her anymore. Not the woman you remember. No, James agreed softly. You're more. You're Emily and Hope. You survived what should have killed you, built a life from nothing, raised our daughter alone. His hand covered hers. I'm not asking you to be who you were. I'm asking for a chance to know who you are now. Before she could respond, Ethan and Riley appeared, both elegantly dressed and looking surprisingly comfortable in their formal attire. Mom, they're asking for us, Riley said. The press coordinator says we should enter as a family. The word family hung in the air, both promise and complication. Where's Betty? Hope asked. She should be with us. Already inside, Ethan reported. She refused to walk the red carpet nonsense, as she called it. Hope smiled, imagining Betty's gruff dismissal of the pageantry. Smart woman. As they prepared to enter, James offered his arm. Ready, Mrs. Whitmore. The name still felt strange, a borrowed identity she was relearning to inhabit. Ms. Carson Whitmore, she corrected. For now, he accepted this with a nod. For now, the family stepped into the ballroom to a flurry of camera flashes. The official story had been carefully managed. Emily Whitmore's miraculous survival, her amnesia, the recent discovery of her whereabouts through an incredible coincidence. The darker elements, the attempted murder, the fraud, remained confidential pending legal proceedings. As they moved through the crowd, Hope caught sight of a familiar face. Detective Thompson stood near the bar. Looking uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo, she excused herself to join him. Not your typical scene, she asked. Definitely not. He sipped his whiskey. You clean up nice, Hope, or should I call you Emily now? I'm still figuring that out. She watched as James fielded questions from reporters, Ethan and Riley flanking him protectively. It's strange. I remember more every day, but it's like watching someone else's life. I know I lived it, but Hope Carson is real too, Thompson finished. Might be easier if she wasn't. Exactly. She turned back to him. Any word on Vanessa's pregnancy claim? Thompson's expression darkened. DNA test confirmed it. The baby is James's. Hope absorbed this. The final complication in an already complex situation. She'll use that, even from jail. Without doubt, Judge denied bail again yesterday. She's not taking it well. And Garrett, singing like a bird, trading testimony for a reduced sentence. Thompson hesitated. You know they'll drag you through hell at the trial. I know. Hope straightened her shoulders. But I've survived worse. Across the room, James caught her eye, his gaze asking a silent question. Hope nodded slightly, excusing herself from Thompson to rejoin her family, her past and future colliding in a present she was still learning to navigate. For tonight, at least, Emily Whitmore had officially returned from the dead. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, a new identity to forge, one that honored both the woman she had been and the woman she had become. The courthouse steps teemed with reporters, their questions blending into an indecipherable roar as Hope entered the building. 4 months had passed since the confrontation in Garrett's office, and today marked the beginning of Vanessa's trial. Garrett had already accepted a plea deal, 15 years for financial crimes, with the possibility of parole after 8, in exchange for his testimony against his sister. Remember, you don't need to watch if it becomes too much, James murmured as they navigated security. Nobody would blame you for stepping out. Hope squeezed his hand in response. I've waited 12 years for justice. I need to see this through. Inside the courtroom, they settled into the front row of the gallery. Betty had insisted on accompanying them despite her deteriorating health, her thin frame dwarfed by the wooden bench. Ethan and Riley remained at school, a mutual decision to shield them from the media circus. When the bailiff announced the court's entrance, Hope found herself holding her breath. Vanessa appeared from a side door, her prison jumpsuit replaced with a conservative gray suit that couldn't fully disguise her 7-month pregnancy. Her eyes, cold and calculating as ever, swept the courtroom before settling on Hope with undisguised hatred. All rise. The Honorable Judge Marianne Chen presiding in the case of the state versus Vanessa Brooks. As the proceedings began, Hope studied the woman who had stolen 12 years of her life. Vanessa's pregnancy had been strategically displayed in pre-trial hearings, earning sympathy from certain media outlets, questioning the ethics of prosecuting an expectant mother. The state will prove beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant, Vanessa Brooks, attempted to murder Emily Whitmore on May 17th. 12 years ago, the prosecutor began. We will show how Mrs. Brooks deliberately forced Mrs. Whitmore's vehicle off a mountain road, leaving her for dead, all to prevent the exposure of a massive financial fraud scheme orchestrated by Mrs. Brooks and her brother. Vanessa's attorney countered with equal confidence. The defense will demonstrate that these charges are based on recovered memories, notoriously unreliable, and circumstantial evidence contaminated by the passage of time. Furthermore, we contend that the alleged victim's amnesia makes her testimony suspect at best, fabricated at worst. Hope flinched at the character assassination. But James's steady presence beside her provided anchor. The morning proceeded with opening statements and initial testimony from the crash investigators who had examined the scene 12 years earlier. During the lunch recess, Hope retreated to a private conference room arranged by their attorneys. Betty looked exhausted, the morning's proceedings clearly taking a toll. "Betty, you should go home," Hope urged. "Rest. I'll call with updates." "Not a chance." The older woman's voice was weaker than usual, but resolute. "I've carried this secret for 12 years. I'm seeing it through. At least eat something." Hope pushed a sandwich toward her. "Your doctors said..." "My doctors said I'd be dead 3 months ago." Betty managed a wry smile. "Yet here I sit." James entered, his expression grave. "Thompson just called. Vanessa's lawyer is requesting private conference chambers with the judge. They're floating a potential plea deal." "What kind of deal?" Hope asked. Alarmed. "Reduced charges, manslaughter attempt instead of premeditated attempted murder, 10 years instead of 25 to life." James looked grim. "Her attorney is leveraging the pregnancy, suggesting incarceration would endanger the child." Hope's jaw tightened. "That baby is a human being, not a get-out-of-jail-free card." "I agree, but the optics are challenging for the prosecution." James ran a hand through his hair. "The DA wants to know if we'd support a plea." "Absolutely not," Hope said immediately. "She tried to kill me. She took 12 years of my life, of our family's life." Her hand moved unconsciously to her pendant. "No deals." James nodded, relieved. "That's what I told Thompson, just wanted to confirm." When court reconvened, Vanessa seemed oddly confident. The prosecutor called Thompson to the stand, establishing the evidence trail that had led to identifying Hope Carson as Emily Whitmore. "Detective Thompson," Vanessa's attorney began during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you were removed from the original investigation under suspicion of evidence tampering?" Thompson remained composed. "I was removed after questioning the official narrative that Mrs. Whitmore's death was accidental. Accusations of tampering were fabricated and later dismissed." "By whom were these accusations made?" "By your client, Mrs. Brooks and her brother," the attorney pressed on. "And isn't it true that you've harbored a grudge against my client for 12 years, that finding Emily Whitmore became an obsession for you?" "Objection. Calls for speculation on the witness's mental state," the prosecutor intervened. "Sustained," Judge Chen ruled. As Thompson stepped down, the prosecutor announced, "The state calls Hope Carson, legally recognized as Emily Whitmore, to the stand." Hope moved forward steadily, taking the oath with a clear voice. From the witness box, she could see Vanessa more clearly, the calculated way she positioned her hands protectively over her belly whenever the jury looked her way. "Mrs. Whitmore," the prosecutor began gently, "please describe for the court your memories of the events on May 17th, 12 years ago." Hope took a deep breath. "I had discovered financial irregularities in Whitmore Properties' international accounts. After gathering evidence for several months, I confronted Garrett Brooks, who essentially admitted to the fraud, but warned me against exposing it. What happened after that confrontation? I planned to show the evidence to my husband that evening, but Vanessa called, claiming she had additional information about the fraud. She asked me to meet her on Elkhorn Road before going home." Hope's voice remained steady. "When I arrived, she initially pretended to be helpful. Then her demeanor changed. She said I should have minded my own business, that the company needed the laundered money to expand. What happened next? I told her I was going to James regardless. That's when she returned to her car. I thought she was leaving. But instead," Hope paused, the memory vivid and painful. "Instead, she accelerated toward me. I managed to get back into my car, but she repeatedly rammed me from behind, forcing me toward the guardrail. Did she succeed in forcing you off the road? Yes. My car broke through the barrier. I remember falling, the airbag deploying, then nothing until I woke up in the hospital with no memory of who I was. The prosecutor continued methodically, establishing the timeline and corroborating evidence when Vanessa's attorney began cross-examination. His approach was immediately aggressive. Ms. Carson, or Whitmore, or whoever you claim to be today, isn't it convenient that these specific memories returned just when you needed them? Objection. The prosecutor stood, badgering the witness. I'll rephrase, the defense attorney said smoothly. You testified that your memories returned gradually. When exactly did you recall the specific details about my client allegedly forcing you off the road? In Garrett Brooks' office. About 4 months ago, being in that space triggered the memory. And before that moment, nothing for 12 years. I had fragments, nightmares, but not complete memories. No. The attorney paced before the witness box. Are you aware that trauma-induced memories are notoriously unreliable? That they can be influenced by suggestion and external information? Objection. The prosecutor rose again. Counsel is testifying, not questioning. Sustained. The defense attorney changed tactics. Ms. Carson, you've resumed a relationship with James Whitmore, have you not? Hope shifted uncomfortably. We're working through things for our children's sake. Indeed, and if my client is convicted, you stand to reclaim your position as Mrs. Whitmore, along with access to considerable wealth and social standing. That's not why. Just answer the question. Do you not benefit financially and socially from my client's conviction? Hope met his gaze directly. I benefit from justice being served. How noble. His tone dripped sarcasm. One final question. If you were so certain my client attempted to murder you, why did you wait 4 months to bring charges? Why the delay? Hope glanced at James before answering. Because of the baby. Despite what Vanessa did to me, her child is innocent. We wanted to ensure proper medical care was arranged before proceeding. The attorney's momentum faltered visibly. He hadn't expected compassion. No further questions, Your Honor. As Hope returned to her seat, she passed Vanessa, whose composed mask had slipped to reveal pure venom. This isn't over, Vanessa whispered, too low for others to hear. You'll never have him back, not completely. Hope paused, leaning slightly toward her nemesis. I don't need him back, she whispered in return. I've already won. I'm alive. I have both my children, and you'll watch your child grow up through prison visitation glass. Vanessa's face contorted with barely suppressed rage as Hope continued to her seat, the brief exchange unnoticed by the court. The remainder of the day brought technical witnesses, medical experts confirming Hope's injuries were consistent with her account, forensic accountants documenting the fraud Garrett had already confessed to orchestrating with Vanessa. As court adjourned for the day, Betty's frail hand clasped Hope's. You did well, girl. Held your ground. It's not over yet, Hope cautioned, helping Betty to her feet. Her attorney is skilled. Doesn't matter how skilled he is, Betty said with quiet certainty. Truth has a weight that lies don't. You feel it in your bones when someone's speaking true. Outside, Thompson waited by their car, his expression grave. We need to talk. About Vanessa's baby. James tensed visibly. What about it? She's claiming complications, requesting transfer to a medical facility instead of returning to county. Hope exchanged glances with James. Despite everything, the child was innocent, and potentially James's. Is it legitimate? The complication? Medical officer says her blood pressure is concerning, could be stress-induced preeclampsia. Thompson lowered his voice. Or it could be another manipulation tactic. James closed his eyes briefly, the weight of responsibility evident. I'll have my physician consult. Ensure she gets proper care, but with appropriate security. As they drove away from the courthouse, Hope gazed at the city skyline, the weight of the day settling over her. The trial would continue for weeks, with no guarantee of the outcome. Vanessa's pregnancy complicated matters enormously, creating a human shield that even the most damning evidence might not penetrate. What are you thinking? James asked softly, as the car navigated evening traffic. Hope turned from the window. That justice isn't always straightforward. That sometimes the most you can hope for is that the truth is finally known. James covered her hand with his. The truth is known. You're alive. Our family is together. Whatever the verdict, we've already won the most important battle. Hope nodded, wishing she could fully embrace his optimism. But Vanessa's whispered threat lingered in her mind, a reminder that some battles leave permanent scars, and some victories come at unexpected costs. 1 year later, the mountain air carried the scent of wildflowers as Hope stood at the exact spot where her car had broken through the guardrail 12 years earlier, the ravine below. Once the site of near death, now seemed oddly peaceful, a testament to nature's indifference to human drama. "Are you sure about this?" James asked, coming to stand beside her. "We don't have to do the ceremony here." Hope touched her pendant, a gesture that had evolved from nervous habit to deliberate ritual. "This is where Emily died and Hope was born. It feels right to mark the integration here." Behind them, Riley and Ethan waited near the cars. Giving their mother space, the past year had transformed them all. Ethan, now a first-year law student, determined to help victims of financial crimes. Riley flourishing as she embraced both her mathematical talents and her Whitmore heritage. Between them, strapped securely in a carrier, little Aurora slept peacefully, her cherubic face showing no hint of the tumultuous circumstances surrounding her birth. Hope turned from the ravine, moving toward her children, both the son she had lost and rediscovered, and the daughter who had anchored her through years of uncertainty, and now this third child, unexpected and complicated in her origins, but embraced wholeheartedly by the reconstructed family. "Ready?" she asked, reaching for Aurora's carrier. Ethan nodded, his expression solemn but eyes warm. Betty would have loved this. The mention of Betty brought a familiar ache. She had passed peacefully 3 months earlier, holding out just long enough to see Vanessa sentenced to 18 years for attempted murder and fraud. A partial victory tempered by the reality that with good behavior, she could be paroled in as little as 12. Betty's final words to Hope had been characteristically pragmatic. "Don't waste time on bitterness, girl. I've seen how it eats people from inside. Live well. That's the best revenge." The small family made their way up a winding path to a natural plateau overlooking the valley. There, a simple stone memorial had been erected, not for Emily Whitmore, whose death had been officially invalidated, but for Betty Reynolds, whose quiet courage had saved 2 lives and preserved a family's future. Thompson waited by the memorial, looking more at ease in casual clothes than he ever had in his detective's attire. Since retiring from private investigation, he had become an unexpected but welcome friend to the family. "Beautiful spot," he commented as they approached. "Betty would approve." "Not too fancy," Hope agreed with a smile. "She always said the mountains don't care how important you think you are," as Riley laid flowers at the base of the stone. James arranged a small folding table nearby, placing upon it a velvet box and several photographs. Emily and James on their wedding day, Hope holding newborn Riley, a recent family portrait including Aurora, visual testaments to lives separated and recombined when they gathered around the table. Hope removed her crescent moon pendant for the first time in memory. The emerald caught the sunlight, its tiny flaw, the angel's tear, visible against the green depths. "For 12 years, this was my only connection to a past I couldn't remember," she said, her voice steady. "It anchored me when everything else was fog." She held the pendant toward the light, studying it one last time before placing it on the table. From her pocket, she withdrew a delicate jeweler's tool. "Emily Whitmore and Hope Carson were both real," she continued. "Both lived, both loved, both protected their children fiercely. I am not choosing between them anymore." With precise movements, she worked the tiny mechanism hidden within the pendant's setting. The crescent moon separated into 2 pieces, each still beautiful, each now transformed into something new. "Riley," she called softly. Her daughter stepped forward, dark eyes serious beyond her 12 years. "This half represents Hope, the woman who raised you, who found strength she never knew she had, who built a life from nothing." Hope placed the half crescent in Riley's palm. "It's a reminder that we can survive what should destroy us." Riley closed her fingers around the pendant piece, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Ethan," her son approached, the young man now taller than James, his features a perfect blend of his parents. "This half represents Emily, the woman who loved you from your first breath, who fought to protect what was right, who never truly left even when her memories did." She placed the second half crescent in his hand. "It's a reminder that love leaves marks too deep for even amnesia to erase." Ethan's expression, usually so controlled, broke with emotion as he accepted the gift. Hope turned to James, who held Aurora, and for our newest beginning, she removed a third item from the box, a tiny silver chain bearing a custom-made pendant, 2 crescent moons overlapping to form a circle with the emerald at its center. "The past and present joined to create a future," she said, as James helped her fasten it around the baby's tiny wrist. Not as a burden for her to carry, but as a promise that her story begins with healing, not division. Aurora stirred briefly, tiny fingers curling around the delicate chain before she settled back to sleep. Hope looked at her assembled family, the one she had lost and found, the one she had built unaware, and the newest addition bridging both worlds. The integration wasn't seamless. There were still moments when James would reference experiences Emily should remember, but Hope couldn't. Times when Riley missed their simple life above the restaurant. But they were navigating it together, creating something new from fragments that could have remained forever broken. "There's one more thing," James said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I wasn't sure when to give you this, but now seems right." He handed Hope a small envelope. Inside was a deed for Granny Betty's kitchen. "You purchased the restaurant?" she asked, surprised. "I thought you might want to keep it, not to run day to day necessarily, but as a connection to those years. To honor Betty." He looked uncertain. "If you'd rather sell it..." "No," Hope said quickly. "It's perfect. It should stay in the family." She thought of the humble restaurant where Hope Carson had found purpose and community, where Betty had created a haven for a lost soul with no memory. It deserved to continue. Perhaps with a scholarship program for culinary students, named for the gruff but loving woman who had protected them. As they gathered their things to depart, Hope cast a final glance at the mountain vista. The Emily who had driven this road 12 years ago could never have imagined the journey ahead. The loss, the rebirth, the complicated path back to herself. The Hope who had awakened in a hospital with no past could never have envisioned standing here, surrounded by a family reclaimed and expanded. Yet here she stood, not fully Emily anymore, not merely Hope, but something altogether new. A woman forged in trauma and resilience, with memories both recovered and created, and a future unfolding in directions none could have predicted. At the cars, Riley approached with a hesitant expression. "What do I call you now?" she asked. "Just Mom seems too simple after everything." Hope smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "I've been your mom through 2 lifetimes and 2 names. That's the one title that never changed." As they drove away from the mountain that had both ended and preserved her life, Hope felt a sense of closure, not the neat, perfect kind found in storybooks, but the messy, real-world version that acknowledges scars while refusing to be defined by them. Vanessa remained a shadow over their lives from her prison cell, her occasional letters to James about Aurora, a reminder of connections that couldn't be severed completely. Garrett served his time quietly, the fraternal loyalty shattered beyond repair. The Whitmore Company had weathered the scandal, emerging more transparent and ethical under James and Hope's joint leadership. But these were merely outward circumstances. The true resolution lay in the small moments. Ethan and Riley's sibling banter across the dinner table, Aurora's first tentative steps toward a mother who had chosen her despite every complication, James reaching for Hope's hand in the darkness, no longer searching for Emily but cherishing the woman who had somehow managed to be both who she was and who she had become. The pendant, now divided and transformed, no longer represented a single woman's lineage. Instead, it symbolized a family fractured by violence but stubbornly reconfiguring into something stronger, binding together past and present.